Hi, my name is Dr. Ann Romosz. I'm contributing faculty in the psychology department here at Walden University, and I want to welcome everybody to our discussion. We're going to spend some time talking a little bit about the three of us on our trajectory in our career being educational psychologists, to demonstrate that this is a career that has a vast lots of options, a vast amount of options for career development. So hopefully by listening a little bit to our career trajectories, you'll understand that there's no guarantees. These certainly aren't going to be everybody's options, but that there are several options out there to explore with a doctorate in educational psychology. Next slide, please. The goals of this session are to learn just various components of the program and training as it relates to educational psychology, to learn about options for working in educational psychology, different fields that are available, as well as to consider the different junctures or career trajectories that we'll talk about in our three examples, and explore some tools for moving forward, like what comes next with an ed psych degree. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the substance of each of our programs that we all adhered to, the PhD programs that we went to, our work histories, what at different junctures and journeys for both early, mid, and later career, and of course some surprises along the way. And then moving forward, what kind of tools and theories are available with educational psychology as your background, and how can they be used? Next slide, please. So as I already mentioned, I'm going to kick it off, start the ball rolling here. I'm Dr. Ann Romosz. I've been fortunate to be at Walden for over 11 years now as a contributing faculty member. And I'd just like to start off by talking a little bit about my background and the training that I received. I am a graduate of the University of Buffalo, which is a Research One institution in Western New York. And if you have been watching the news, Buffalo was in the news most recently for a terrible shooting. Unfortunately, we have another shooting today, barely a week and a half later, in Texas. So I'd just like to take a moment to reflect on both of those incidents and the ones that have come prior to that, to mention that our work in this field, particularly as educational psychologists, is not done. There's lots of work to do. So I believe that my training and my experience, as well as that of my colleagues that come from different backgrounds, really is an asset to dealing with some real world problems that we see in our culture today, in our country today. The University of Buffalo, the educational psychology department was actually housed in a school counseling and educational psychology program. So I was able to take courses alongside of school psychologists as well as counseling psychologists that earned their PhD in counseling psychology. So there were some clinical elements to my training. There was definitely some assessment elements to my training, and there was a lot of research because it was a Research One university. I spent a great deal of time taking quantitative and qualitative coursework alongside research methodology and design. I conducted several research studies before leaving my PhD program. And so I was really set on a trajectory for research assessment, and with this kind of a clinical component as well. I took a lot of classes on teaching in psychology. I knew I wanted to be an academic and a researcher at that time. So I was very fortunate that it was a very eclectic program. They allowed me to take courses both inside of the counseling school and educational psychology department, as well as outside of it. So I obtained a position as a project director, directing a research project. If you're familiar with NIH grants, R01, there was an R01 grant that needed a project director to kind of run the show while the principal investigator could continue on writing additional grants to secure more funding. I was fortunate enough during my end of my master's and early part of my PhD to be hired on as such a project director. And in that role, it really afforded me opportunities to learn a little bit more about drug and alcohol use, particularly in educational context, how it affects educational and academic outcomes. And because of that, I was able to take courses in addiction that were offered through the School of Medicine and the School of Nursing. So because my program was pretty eclectic at the University of Buffalo, like I said, I was fortunate enough to be around counseling majors as well as school psychologists, but I also was able to be outside of the department and go to the School of Medicine and work in the nursing program and things of that nature. So I got, for example, a neurobasis of addictions course that I was able to take, and it was a really enlightening course given the nature of the work I was doing on that research project. So that's a little bit about my training and background. I was really, really, really just blessed, if you will, that before I'd even defended my dissertation, I had a tenure track position that I was offered. And so I began by teaching teachers in an educational foundations program at another state university. And at that time, that school wasn't a research one. It was what's called a research 2. And I was able to kind of continue on some of the research I had began back during my doctoral program, but also start to really revamp my teaching practices and get to know educational psychologists through a different lens, where I was working with future teachers that were studying to be K through 12 teachers. I got to go into schools and meet with principals. I got to work on assessment batteries that afforded me an opportunity to look at how mass and standardized testing worked within school districts. So it kind of drew on some of that assessment background and that research background that I had, but allowed me to kind of apply it in educational settings. After a few years, I decided to start a family, and my husband's job moved us. And so I had to leave my tenure track position, and that was really a difficult decision. So that's one of those kind of surprises along the career path that I think is important to note. I had to change direction. And that's what landed me here at Walden, if I'm honest. It was the fact that I had the ability to still use the skills that I had acquired and work with students and teach and earn money, of course, while being able to follow my husband's career and not be locked down in one city. So I felt very, very fortunate for that. And so in the middle of my career, I would say, because that kind of, the first part is the early parts of my career. The middle part of my career was really about perfecting my teaching practices, learning about adult learning, spending some time not only on best practices, but learning about adult learning theory and andragogical models, and becoming more eclectic and diverse in my ability to teach learners from all walks of life, not just from a city that I had kind of grown up in, from Buffalo, New York. But this allowed me to work with people across the country and even outside of our domestic country. So I felt really, really passionate about the work I did. Alongside my work at Walden, I continued to consult, making it, one of those things, and that's one of the things that is available to educational psychologists. You have to be very self-driven and self-motivated on this, but you can offer your services as a consultant. Once you have a doctorate in educational psychology, you can talk and negotiate hourly rates, but you can work on contracts, you can work within organizations, and because you have, depending on your expertise, if you have an expertise in statistics, for example, you can utilize that skill set, which I was able to utilize earlier in the mid parts of my career. I still consider myself the mid parts of my career. And then my qualitative analysis kind of also was able to take off. And so the consulting work kind of complemented the teaching, and it informed the teaching. It was a way for me to use research in a consulting role and work in educational settings. I worked for an organization called Psychological Education Services down in Florida for a while, where I was doing tutoring and working with students who were struggling in the K through 12 environment. I was doing some parent advocacy work, helping them to advocate for their child within the classroom with the teachers when there were 504s or IEPs being generated for students. I was able to meet with the team of experts. So I'm not a neuropsychologist, I don't have that background, but very often these students came with neuropsych batteries and testing that I was able to then kind of look at, evaluate, and figure out action plans and how I could help the parents advocate for the child within the K through 12 environment. So those were some of the things I kind of did in the early parts of my mid-career. Most recently, I was eventually hired on and core faculty at another institution as well, and it's in an organizational leadership and business psychology program, which a lot of people wouldn't necessarily think of when you think of educational psychology, but there's this component to educational psychology psychology that I really want to convey to folks. And that's the adult learning piece. The adult learning piece, and we've done a nice job at Walden, I think, at really promoting that. It's a course I teach every term at Walden. I've been teaching it for about 5 years now. Of course, I'm gonna sell it because I created it and I teach it, but it really affords an opportunity for us to think about adult learners, both in terms of, okay, teaching in higher education systems, but also, training and how we can train in HR and organizational leadership roles, right? If you work in a human resource role. So I didn't even realize what I was doing when I was doing it, but I was really kind of branching my career into two directions, which was still the K through 12 educational or higher ed environment, but also this kind of HR learning and development piece that I was because I became a trainer. I was, very much aligned to corporate training, and I had done some corporate training in the earlier parts of my career as well, working at tech centers that offered some, train the trainer courses and help desk support courses and things like that. So there's some really nifty things that you can do. There's a lot of shifts in there that I kind of exposed you all to. As you can see, there's a breadth and a depth. I do a lot of consulting work still to this day, which mostly incorporates research, which has really taken a turn for DEI efforts right now. I'm looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting work, where I go into organizations, higher ed organizations, school districts, as well as just organizations that are non-for-profit organizations, for-profit organizations, small, large, and I give them kind of the lay of the land. I collect the data both quantitatively and qualitatively to analyze that data, tell them what's going on with the culture of their environment is, and talk about ways that they can develop their environment to be more inclusive in a diverse way, have accessibility, and some of the things that some organizations are still trying to work out. Where next? I have no idea. I have no idea what the world has in store for me. I know that's been an exciting journey, and I feel like there's been endless possibilities. I feel like one of the things I really like about Ed Psych is that you have the ability to go the clinical route, kind of go the assessment route, go the teaching route, go the consultant route, go the business route. It's an eclectic degree. Now, nothing is guaranteed. I've had to chase down every lead I've had. So I never want to, I don't want to impart to the group that this was something that was easy to do. And there are ebbs and flows. There have been periods where I had less work and wish I made more money, but there have been really, really some wonderful highlights in my career and things I got to be involved in that I wouldn't have been involved in had I not had such an eclectic background. So very, very excited to talk about being an educational psychologist. I hope you learned a little bit from my talk, and I will turn it over to my colleague now. Thank you for listening.
Hi, my name is Tanguma, and I come from Texas A&M University, where I did my MS and PhD, both in education psychology. My training was mostly on the statistical side. I come from the math background, so I did all the courses that I needed to do as part of the program. And then all my electives were taken with the statistics department in the statistical area, because that's where my interest is. And during my training, my coursework, I did a lot of IRT, program evaluation, research methodology. One of the things that A&M required from us was that during your coursework, you were expected to present in conferences, and you were expected to have some publications by the time you finish and you graduate. Now, that was many years ago, and since then I have had different jobs, and some of the jobs are similar to what other presenters are talking about, but it's not something that is guaranteed by the university or guaranteed by anybody. It's just what you like. I come from teaching in public schools, so when I had my degrees, I went back not as a teacher, but as evaluator, director of assessment, and different things that I did. But that was simple because of my training. So at the beginning, I was I was working on the dissertation when I had two offers, two pretty high level universities, because I was doing structural equation modeling and they wanted to contract me. But my family and I decided to come to Houston, or move to Houston, because that was closer to home. And so I settled for Houston, a university in Houston. And that was a nice move, because there I met several program evaluators, and after meeting with them, I kind of went with one of the program evaluators, and then we did program evaluation for a number of years, and I learned how to do it. And then eventually I ventured out into the world by myself doing program evaluations. We did Head Start, Steven Stars, different programs that were available in the area. Most of them had to do on the education side because of my background in the teaching fields. So it was kind of easy for me to follow and understand what they were doing, and then apply both sides, the quantitative and the qualitative side, so that I could do all the talking on the qualitative side, get all the data, all the interviews, and do everything that I needed to do there, and then apply the statistical to derive the conclusions, present to the boards, and so on. But it was very interesting. I did that for a number of years, and then we moved down back to home, and that's where I'm still here. I relocated to another university, and in that university, because of the training, I did quantitative methodology for the business department. I was just statistics teaching, and I did a lot of research in that university with different people from different departments or colleges that will come and do kind of consulting. And so I will coordinate with them, collaborate with them. We go to conferences, presentations, research publications, and so on, because of the statistical background, and they were needing the techniques. So we will combine efforts and get presentations, get publications, and everything that goes with it. We participated in several grants, and on some of them I serve as the evaluator. So it is very diverse what you can do with what we go through in the courses, but it has to do with the courses. I did not delve too much into the learning theories and the other courses that are there, counseling psychology, etc., because I concentrated on the requirements. Once I cleared the requirements, I went to statistics department and I did all the statistics I could get from them. And that made me marketable in different places, doing different jobs because of the training. So it's something that I like, something that I pursue and I wanted to do. And so I took that route, and that's what I have done for several years. I don't know that I'm at the end. I'm already retired from the public schools. I retired from the public universities. So I teach online. I teach here with Walden. I've been with Walden for about almost 11 years. And it's been pretty great. It's a great experience. I enjoy what I do. I like what I do. And my students and I, we get along. They come to me from different psychology sides, from many psychology sides, and some of them, depending if the area has to do with education, I will gladly serve as chair. Otherwise, I prefer to serve as a statistics person. And a lot of the students, they're very focused as to what they want to do. And at least 2 of them have become already director of assessments in the school districts. So it is interesting to see how they follow what we did. And I remind them, this is your life. You take the courses that you need, because when you get there, you will be talking to the board, talking to the Texas Executive Agency, TA, different agencies. When you go for the accreditation, you talk to AACSB, you talk to many different agencies. And so you need to be well-versed in the statistical as well as the qualitative side, so that you can get your job done for the districts or for the universities where you're gonna go work. Where next? Probably stay in Walden, most likely stay in Walden, continue working with my students and pass on to them what I have passed on to me. I have encouraged them, I have trained them, I have helped them. In the statistical side, I have done my best to help them graduate and get the dissertation done. Most of them, once we're done with the dissertation, we find a place to go present. We have presented at APA, we have presented at APS, and we have presented at AERA, and some of the local Southern Educational Research accreditation agencies. So once we're done that way, either they invite me or I invite them. Hey, you want to go present? You want to get exposed to presentation? You want to get exposed to conferences? You want to get exposed to submitting to the journals? And I always tell them, there's nothing guaranteed, but let's give it a try. And then we'll work together. And most of the time we have been successful. It's a great experience to see them, to see that they're doing what I was doing when I was starting, just like them. And just like I had mentors, and they will invite me to Psychometrica, and they would invite me to another one, the APA, the quantitative side, Division 5, and I will meet a lot of people from the statistical and structural regression modeling. We will meet and listen to them. Now I see them following my footsteps, and it's just a great feeling to see that what other people did with me, I'm able to do with them. And then they learn, and they're gonna pass it on to somebody else, and we just keep going and keep going and keep going. But at the end, it's what we want to do. It's what we like to do, what the courses that we want to take, how we're gonna get prepared when we get out and graduate and do our job. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's tough to go after my two colleagues. They're so impressive, and a lot of what they said resonated with me and is representative of my experience as well. So I'll just quickly speak to some of the things that were different and piggyback on some of the things that they said. I went to Michigan State University for my degree, and interestingly, the most useful course that I took while I was there was a course that I just sort of thought it might be interesting to take, but wasn't required for me, and it was instructional design. So this was back in '99, and Dr. Romosz had talked about andragogy and how that's a useful field to have some knowledge in, and andragogy coupled with instructional design, I think is a really winning combination to have those sets of skills, because what I started to realize is that we all are teachers, and we all care about learning, whether we are a parent teaching a child, or a supervisor teaching a supervisee, or a friend teaching a friend. Learning is happening all around us. We are all teaching, we are all learning. And so having the tools and the knowledge and the language to explain that can help us get into a lot of doors. So after I graduated from Michigan State, which was a research focused university as well, so I did some presentations and publications the same way my colleagues did, and I actually ended up at a .com. So I mentioned that this was late '90s. In 2000, I started at a .com, and they were putting together a virtual MBA. So this was before virtual education was super prolific, although I think Walden was around then. And so I went from a very traditional environment to a very new environment, a very kind of future looking environment. Not to say that the university is not, but this was just sort of uncharted territory, and my instructional design skills came in really handy. I was in proprietary for-profit education for a while, which in my university was not something that people had a lot of experience with. So I felt like I was sort of forging my own path. And then you can see in the picture that I shared, I'm not wearing business attire. What I'm actually wearing is a gi for a martial art, a uniform for a martial art called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is actually a learning theorist's dream. It is a big ill-defined knowledge base, and it engages learners on a physical as well as mental, emotional, and psychological levels. And I know this because I've been training and teaching for over 2 decades. So for a while, I devoted myself to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then when I was ready to come back and sort of start to integrate both sides of my personality, that's where Walden came in. So I've been at Walden for I think about 12 years, and again, the skills that I had developed in my early career and in my program prepared me to start teaching at Walden. And then from there, I was able to use Walden as a springboard for other opportunities. And I have done consulting in assessment. I've done consulting in instructional design and curriculum development. And most recently, I am full-time at a different university, and I get to do research on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I'm really excited about. And I also am a board I'm working on National Board for Health and Wellness Coaching certification, and I have an associate coaching credential from the International Coaching Federation. So as an instructor of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I started to come into contact with students who were interested in learning more about themselves and what they wanted out of their lives. And so coaching has been a really wonderful opportunity for me to make those interests dovetail. So to help impart knowledge where that's appropriate, but also to help people draw on their own wellspring of knowledge, draw on their own knowledge about themselves to help them make choices for their lives. And so going forward, what I would like to do is to continue to study Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'd like to continue to coach and study coaching. And I would like to continue to do the other thing that's sort of my interest is in fostering an animal rescue. And so I am looking for ways to incorporate that into a research agenda as well. And meanwhile, I just try to please the cat that lives in my house that was a foster fail. So I think I went over time a little bit, but that is basically me. And thanks for listening. I think we're done.
Yes, we have concluded this portion. Now we will move into any questions. Now it looks like we have time for maybe one question. So anyone feel free to enter that question into the chat. And don't worry, if we do not get to your question, we will certainly give your question to the presenters. So if anyone has a question, go ahead and enter that into the chat. All right, it looks like Dr. Sickle was the one that beat everyone. Her question is, your presentations demonstrate the considerable flexibility possible when applying an educational psychology degree. Are there any suggestions for students just starting to enter this field?
I can speak to that. I know that times are different from when I was first starting out, but I really do think that there's no substitute for, I don't want to say following your bliss, but Dr. Tanguma mentioned this as well, that a focus on what really interests you is going to motivate you to continue to kind of pound the pavement and look for things, and maybe make connections where you wouldn't otherwise have done that. Maybe there are jobs that are exactly perfect for what you're interested in, but if there aren't, I think that all three of us have demonstrated that our interests have taken us in a variety of directions, individually as well as as a group. And so if you're open to the things that interest you and sort of use that as your as your North Star, and a little bit of ingenuity, then you can chart your own course.
Dr. Tanguma, I believe you're on mute. There you are.
Yes, thank you. I would say that when I was a student at A&M, I volunteered in the Office of Research, Institutional Research Office. I volunteered with different, the community college. I volunteered with them to be in the assessment office. So I got myself into a lot of different offices that had to do with assessment, institutional research, institutional effectiveness. So when it was my time to apply, not that I knew about it too much, but I had experience. And I went into those offices and I asked just to volunteer. And they gladly accepted me. I got my feet wet and I learned, but it served me the purpose that when I was already out on the field, I was able to join a school district where I was assessment for the whole district. I was the person doing the assessment, all the testing had to go through my office, but that's what I like to do. So one thing that I would suggest to anybody going into it, volunteer. Volunteer in whatever it is that you want to do, and then you will see if you actually like it. You will see how it benefits you and how it benefits the other people, so that you can see how they feel and how you feel when you're helping them, because they need help. Assessment people, we're there to help interpret the scores. Can we find the predictors that are going effectively predicting the state exam scores? And there's a lot of stuff that goes with it. So go on out for yourself, go and volunteer yourself, and that will serve all of us. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, this concludes the educational psychology session, and I'll turn things over to Dr. Shana Garrett and Dr. Nina Nabors for reflection on the day.
Thank you so much. And thank you to our wonderful presenters. Enjoyed your presentation so much. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here and to share your insights and your wisdom with us. And I'd also just want to thank all of our presenters today. And Kayla, certainly a special round of appreciation and applause for you for kicking off of our sessions and keeping us on task. Greatly appreciate that. I don't know about y'all, but I think we've had some amazing presentations today. Just hearing everybody's stories and their experiences, some of their wisdom about, a lot of their wisdom really, when you talk about persistence and resistance with just all the different things that we've all faced, right? All the different challenges. It was for me, and Nina, I'll ask you to jump in a minute. For me, it's always wonderful to hear the different stories of the journeys that folks have taken to get where they are. And there were several things that really stuck out for me, and that was that everybody had challenges. Everybody had obstacles that they overcame. Nobody gave up. Everybody continued. They persisted. They were resilient. They were determined. And they also had a tremendous amount of flexibility and creativity in how they pursued their goals, right? So for me, those were some of the things that really stood out to me, was that just a level of determination that folks had to do what they did. There were a couple of, the personal stories was a big thing for me. I know in Brian Ragsdale's session, he talked about learning in a community, and that just kind of knocked me back on my heels. I thought that was so incredibly powerful. Nina, how about I stop there and give you an opportunity to jump in?
Thank you. And no, I'm right there with you. I think we sort of teased at the beginning of the day just how diverse psychology is as a discipline. And I think our colleagues did a great job of demonstrating that. It's like every aspect of human society, you can find psychology. So I too applaud all the presenters for fantastic presentations and given folks, I think, a really good breadth of the discipline. And I agree as well. I just love the various ways that our folks come to this place they are currently. I think the personal stories, also the kinds of careers folks had at first and then moved to, right? I mean, there's so many different ways to get here. I think probably mirror some of our students who maybe some of them started off with a particular career and then decided later on, to move over to psychology. There are just really so many ways for folks to come to, again, biased perspective, obviously, one of the best disciplines I think there is. Sorry, but not sorry.
I would agree. I would totally agree.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think part of the other thing about presentations is clearly how much our colleagues enjoy teaching. enjoy interacting with their students, enjoy working with them both in the classroom as well as in research and mentoring activities. And, and I think we both are in the same boat. And so we're always very excited when we have students come in who have research interests and topics, that are near and dear to our hearts. So I really applaud our colleagues for that as well. So yeah, overall, I think this is a fantastic day. And I'm hoping, again, gives all of the folks watching a good sense of what you can do, how you might, move your interest into, an area of psychology.
I agree 100% with everything you said, and I agree with your bias as well.
Yeah.
I think there's so many things about Walden and particularly our faculty that stand out. And you said something, Nina, that really spoke to me, and that is our faculty and their level of engagement and their expertise. And it's not just about the education, it's also the social change mission that we have at Walden, and how they are experts in that area. They're living it every single day. They're engaged in it full time. They're really making a difference out in our communities. And I think back to when I went to school, and I can think of maybe 2 or 3 faculty that had a passing interest, but it was not to the degree that we have here. And I'd say the other thing that I'm really proud of when I tell folks that I'm with Walden is the level of access and approachability that our faculty have with our students. Because I think for many of us, we did not have that kind of access, the opportunity to engage in dialogue and conversation. It was a very traditional setting. And so you didn't have that kind of access to a faculty member say, hey, can I run this idea by you? Or get into a really robust conversation about something that you feel very strongly about. So I think those are a couple of things that make Walden very, very unique. That it's more of a shared learning experience more than traditional. Yeah.
Agreed.
So just going to put this out to the group. What were some of the things that stood out to you today? Was there a particular session? Was there a conversation? Were there any aha moments that you might have had? Just want to open the floor to see what folks are thinking. And, if there's any questions we can answer.
Right, and you can either put them in the chat or you can unmute. Either way works.
Right. I know it's been a really long day. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it's been a great experience. Oh, more than welcome. More than welcome. I know for many of us, this has been really fun, and we've been looking forward to doing this.
Well, while we're waiting to hear from folks, I will have to say that reflecting back on Dr. Wilson's presentation earlier, and just, kind of holding my head, thinking about all the different activities that she's involved in on a regular basis. And I think, again, one of the other themes that came out, not just in her presentation, but several others, is I started off with this, and I might have just been attending X, or really interested in some aspect of this, and it led to a whole nother research area, or it led to me doing this kind of work for this agency that really I hadn't even thought was available. I think that happened quite a bit in our colleagues' stories, and that again was really impressive of sometimes it's being in the right place, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, good. Thank you for the positive feedback. Really appreciate that. That you enjoyed the event. And yes, the sessions are recorded. You do have the ability to, I believe, download and save them. I'd also say that if you don't have any questions now, but maybe later on you're kind of thinking about some stuff, you feel free to reach out to any of us. We're happy to answer any questions. And I think that's another point I wanted to make for today, is that it's also about networking. I know many of us can share with you that somewhere along the path, we reached out to a faculty member or somebody that we may have had a class with, or they may have been an advisor, whatever the case may be, just to get some insights and some information, or to run some ideas. But I know I was just telling Dr. Nabors the other day about a faculty member that I had in my undergraduate program who gave me some of the best advice I've ever had. And y'all, I mean, I've been out of school for a little bit, right? So he really made that big of an impression on me, and he was that influential in my decision to go to grad school and to continue forward. And so it's amazing what the power of one conversation can have. And so if there's ever a question you might have, or an interest on something, or, you know, whatever the case may be, as it relates to psychology and what you're interested in, please feel free to drop a note to any of us, and we're happy to answer those questions for you.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate the feedback. Okay, last call for questions or comments. Yes, I'm going to do a follow-up on June the 2nd, just in case anybody is interested, and happy to be a resource.
Awesome.
All right, any other questions? Okay, I know it's been a tremendously long day, but really, I don't know about y'all, but it flew by for me. Just great session. So again, I want to thank all of the team members that pulled all of this together. Greatly appreciated. Tremendous gratitude and appreciation for our faculty for, again,
Absolutely.
sharing your stories. Dr. Nabors, it's always an absolute pleasure partnering with you on everything.
Mine as well. It's been a great day.
Absolutely. So thank you again. And I don't know, Kayla, do we need to do anything? Did you want to wrap up, or are we good?
I was just going to mention that again, we thank you all, and please plan on attending that open house. Please, please, please. That will be Thursday, June 2nd at 6 p.m. Central Time. And again, you'll receive that via email along with the session recordings and these surveys. So you'll have all that information in one, and we look forward to seeing you there as well. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, folks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.